most heavy fighter pilots are making these same mistakes and they don't even realize it. In this video, I will break them down and show you how to fix them, so you actually start winning more fights. The first mistake, especially among newer players, is bringing the wrong weapon loadout into a fight and not understanding how projectile velocity impacts your performance and the pip. There's a big difference between PvE and PvP loadouts. For PvP dogfight, the general rule is, with most heavy fighters at least, that you want weapons with the highest possible projectile velocity. Why? Because it partially compensates for your ship's low maneuverability. Here is what that means in practice. The faster your bullet speed is, the closer the pip sits to the enemy ship. That means less movement is required from you and your super fucking slow ship, or less adjustment when using the gimbal mode. On top of that, you need to understand how different weapon types behave. Laser weapons, for example, have a very low bullet spread. This allows you to reliably hit targets at much longer distances compared to ballistic weapons. This is especially useful against kiting targets, small enemies like arrows, and for applying consistent pressure at medium range. Right now, CF repeaters are amongst the best all-round choices. They allow you to reliably hit targets up to around 700 meters away from you, and they perform very well in almost any 1v1 scenario. Ballistic Gatling, like the Breakneck or GT series, as well as cannons, can also be strong options depending on the situation. They can perform well in 1v1s against most players, but they become less effective, on a heavy fighter at least, the better your opponent is, especially against skilled light fighter pilots. Due to the bullet spread of ballistic Gatlings, their effective range is reduced to around 450 meters. However, if you can stay on target and avoid being outmaneuvered, they currently outperform laser weapons, especially laser repeaters, in raw damage output in 4.6. If you are flying a heavy fighter purely as a damage platform against larger ships, simply choose the highest damage setup that fits your role and your team roster. The second major mistake is not understanding the role of a heavy fighter in a teamfight. In a teamfight, the heavy fighter always acts as the anchor. That means your team should position and move around you and not the other way around. Ideally, your teammates stay within a radius of about 1 to 1.5 kilometers. 2 kilometers at a max. They should also try to pull enemies towards you, not away from you. Why? Because heavy fighters are slow and cannot chase nimble targets effectively. If your team plays around you properly, you create two major advantages. You can absorb pressure while creating opportunities for your team to third-party enemies, or you can third-party yourself and quickly eliminate targets. If you ever are interested in a heavy fighter guide that specializes on team fighting, so I go into detail into everything, then leave me that in the comments down below and I will create a video in the future about that topic. But all of that brings us to our third mistake. Many heavy fighter pilots think, I'm tanky, I'll just absorb damage, that's all I'm doing. And that is wrong on so many levels. Your role is not to just exist in the fight. Your job is to create opportunities for your team, either by creating openings for your team or by using openings your team created. If you are being focused, don't panic, don't drift randomly into the endless void of space, and for the love of God, do not spam noise clouds while doing so. Only use them if you need to disengage the situation. Because if you spam these noise clouds in a fight while you try to create an opportunity for your team to do damage, you're helping the enemy more than your own teammates. Because the noise cloud blocks target locks for all players, so also for your allies. Instead, control your movement and try to pull the enemy into predictable patterns. This makes it easier for teammates to engage and punish those players. And most importantly, communicate. Call out what is happening around you. Tell your team when you are being pressured. tell them when enemies are exposed and make good third-party targets. And on top of that, you should act as a general information hub, because you can survive longer than most ships. So you have the time and awareness to track the battlefield, call out incoming threats, isolated enemies, isolated teammates that are out of position, and so on and so forth. If you do that right, you can help your teammates immensely, if not carry fights, because they know what is happening behind them. The fourth mistake is a lack of forward pressure. Yes, your core mechanic is distance control through extensions, but knowing when to push is just as important. If you want a full breakdown of distance control, and especially with a focus on extensions and how to properly manage fights as a heavy fighter, you can check out my full heavy fighter guide. I go much deeper into that topic there. So most heavy fighter pilots do not push at all or at the wrong time. But not just when to push is important, but also how far. Sometimes a forward push is not just about reaching your preferred distance to close a gap against a kiter, for example. It can also be used to surprise opponents and apply sudden pressure. A forward push can also be defensive. If your opponent is less skilled, has slower projectile velocity than you, or is less maneuverable, you can use forward pressure to break their nose on target time, which means you can do damage while they cannot. But even if you are also unable to get shots on the target, this move can be very strong and gives you a new defensive maneuver. Also, avoid staying in a purely backwards movement state. This makes it much harder for you to react and change direction, especially against faster and more agile ships. It also makes you very easy to hit and predictable, and also so easy to third party because of that. If you never apply forward pressure, you give up control of the fight, and that will lose you all engagements. But don't just push mindlessly. You still need to maintain your preferred distance in around 150 to 450 meters, while mixing in controlled aggressive pushes to deal large amounts of burst damage, to extend or to avoid getting hit. Those pushes, especially the ones where you surprise an enemy that is merging towards you, can be extended into a joust if the situation allows it, to create distance afterwards, so you're not just getting fisted in a close-up fight you will always lose, especially against medium or light fighters. The fifth and most crucial thing and biggest mistake is a lack of game and fighter knowledge. Many heavy fighter pilots simply don't understand what they are up against in a fight. They either don't know how maneuverable a ship is, how fast it is, or what its weapons are capable of. In a heavy fighter, one wrong decision based on missing knowledge can be fatal, and most of the time you cannot recover from it, especially against very good players. For example, if you are flying a Guardian MX against a Hornet, you need to understand how much more maneuverable the Hornet is in comparison to you. That alone determines where you should push or extend, but it doesn't stop there. You also need to understand weapon matchups. If you are running ballistic Gatlings and the Hornet is using lasers, you want to fight close and brawl, and if the situation would be reversed, so you are using lasers and the Hornet uses Gatlings, you want to create more distance. So you don't have just your 150 to 450 meters and you're good to go. No, you need to increase or decrease that distance in that range, or sometimes even get a bit closer or a bit farther away, depending on what weapons you are flying, what weapons the enemy is flying, and what ships you both are using and how nimble and fast they are. Why? Let's stick to the laser example. The Hornet has Gatlings and you have lasers. You want to create more distance to force the Hornet to miss a lot more shots due to the bullet spread, while your lasers remain effective. Understanding these matchups is critical for every engagement you have. It may sound like a lot, because there are a fuck ton of ships and a fuck ton of different weapons, and it is a lot, but you naturally learn it over time through experience. The fastest way to improve is fly different ships, and also different weapon loadouts yourself. Once you understand how they feel, how they fly, how they behave in combat, and what their strengths and weaknesses are, you will understand how to beat them. If you actually want to improve fast, you need to actively learn these matchups, not just passively experience them in a heavy fighter. And if you want to take all of this even further and really master heavy fighters, make sure to check out my full heavy fighter guide that ties everything neatly together and also gives you some more knowledge. Or if you want to know what heavy fighter is the strongest amongst the heavy fighters and you want to pick a heavy fighter or choose based on that, you can watch the tier list right here.